This movie was a flop, and this one too, and so was this one. This one lost money as well, and this one, and this one. Out of the last 10 DC movies, only one managed to be profitable. The Flash didn't even hit 300 million. Black Adam featured a cameo of Henry Cavill's Superman and still flopped. Wonder Woman 2, Shazam 2, and Aquaman 2 didn't even earn half as much as their predecessors. And Joker 2 is the biggest bomb in the history of the superhero genre. But how can that be? The DC brand used to mean quality and box office success, like Nolan's Batman or Richard Donner's Superman. But right now, it seems impossible for the studio to recreate those hits.
Misery, misery, misery.
Today on Mr. Headcannon, we're going to explain the 5 reasons why DC movies keep bombing in theaters. The first reason is the characters. As James Gunn explained, if people don't care about the characters, they won't go to the theater, no matter how good the movie is, or how much they spend on marketing. DC should be thriving here, with the big two, Superman and Batman, the world's most famous superheroes, the ones even your aunt would recognize. Some people say Superman is boring and outdated, but every single live-action adaptation of The Man of Steel gets people talking. The problem is with the other characters. The other members of the Justice League aren't as popular as the Avengers, the X-Men, or the Fantastic Four. According to a survey by Game, Marvel is more popular than DC in 51 out of 60 countries. That's a 5-to-1 preference for Marvel. Characters like Deadpool, Iron Man, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and the rest are more popular than any DC character besides Superman or Batman, since they've had more adaptations in recent years and have connected better with audiences. This is why people are more likely to watch a Marvel movie over a DC one, unless Superman or Batman are involved, as they are the only DC characters people really care about.
That does make sense.
This explains why so many recent DC projects failed. They featured secondary characters with no connection to the big two. Warner made 2 Joker movies without Batman. They made 2 Shazam movies, 2 Suicide Squad movies, and 2 Aquaman movies before making a Man of Steel sequel, or a movie starring Ben Affleck's Batman. It's crazy that Superman has only appeared in live action 4 times in the last 10 years, including 2 cameos and post-credit scenes that led nowhere. It's no surprise that the only profitable DC movie in the last 5 years starred Batman. If DC had used their strongest characters more, they'd have made a lot more money. Sure, there are exceptions that worked well, like The Penguin. It's a show about a secondary Batman villain, and Batman isn't in it, yet it's doing great on HBO Max. But that's because the show is extremely high quality and a direct sequel to a Batman movie. If it were independent like Joker 2, I bet it wouldn't be getting nearly as many views.
I can't find a flaw in his logic.
The second reason is that the DC multiverse was a mess from the start and confused everyone, even hardcore fans. In a rushed attempt to compete with Marvel, DC built a cinematic universe around Zack Snyder's ideas, ignoring the fact that they already had TV shows with a pretty decent following. They had already developed characters like Flash and Green Arrow, and people had grown attached to them. They hoped to see their adventures on the big screen, in the first universe to connect movies and TV shows, something Marvel wouldn't even attempt until 2019. DC could have jumped ahead of Marvel in 2013 and drawn fans of the TV shows into theaters, taking advantage of DC's existing fan base, but they didn't. Warner kept the 2 universes separate, except for a 2-minute crossover in Crisis on Infinite Earths that added nothing to the story. These universes even competed with each other, with 2 live-action Flashes appearing at the same time. And let's not forget the animated universes, which also had no connection to the others, and Joker, which doesn't connect with the DCU, Nolan's Batman, or the TV shows. Then there's the Batman, which was initially meant to be a Snyderverse prequel, but ended up as part of yet another universe. And then there's Superman and Lois, with the same actors from the Arrowverse, but set in another unconnected universe. And let's not forget Doom Patrol, Titans, and Swamp Thing.
It's too much!
This massive number of parallel universes allowed filmmakers more creative freedom, as they weren't bound to a single continuity like in Marvel. But it was terrible for audiences, who eventually couldn't figure out what belonged to which universe. Since James Gunn announced his new DC universe in 2023, fans are even more confused, as the plan is for all DC stories to start from scratch, but Gunn's keeping a few actors from the old universe, like John Cena and Viola Davis. If fans are confused, how do you think casual viewers feel? I can't blame my aunt for thinking Joker is a prequel to Nolan's Batman, or that Robert Pattinson is a younger version of Ben Affleck.
I'm so confused.
This confusion affects the box office for all DC movies, as a lot of people don't know where each new movie fits in. They don't know if they need to watch something beforehand, what connects to each movie, or if it'll even have a sequel, so they just stay home. The third reason is that the DC fandom is completely divided. Superhero movies, more than any other genre, make their money off their fans. They're the ones who show up on day one for each new movie in the shared universe. They're the ones who convince friends to go to the theater because they want to share their passion. They fill conventions. They pay for streaming services to watch episodes as soon as they drop, and they're the ones who spend their money on all the merch. But DC did the one thing a franchise like this can't afford. They divided their own fandom. This started with Batman v Superman. Half the audience left the theater loving it, while the other half thought it was the worst piece of crap they'd ever seen. DC fans split into pro-Snyder and anti-Snyder camps, a division that still exists today. This had never happened with DC. Everyone agreed that Nolan's Batman was excellent, and everyone equally hated Batman and Robin. Fans were all on the same page until 2016, when part of them jumped ship. The fandom split, just like what happened with Star Wars after The Last Jedi. Some fans think it's one of the best in the franchise, while others believe it's the worst thing that's ever happened to Star Wars. And that doesn't help anyone. The fans, who should be united supporting new projects, making theories, joining in positive discussions, and enjoying being part of a community, are fighting each other. They argue and insult each other on Twitter because some think Henry Cavill's Superman arc is amazing, while others think Snyder never understood DC's superheroes.
Hero or menace?
This has made the conversation around DC very negative since 2016. No one wants to be a fan of these movies, because you know you'll have to fight with everyone. Half the fans don't go to the movies, and no new fans are joining. The atmosphere is still negative today, unlike Marvel, which has a more unified fan base that supports most of the releases. They don't just consume everything blindly, but they aren't split down the middle like DC fans. A negative environment like this scares people off, because nobody wants to be fighting every single day. There are even DC fans who refuse to go to the movies since Gunn announced the new universe, because they don't want to support any non-Snyder projects.
Ridiculous.
The fourth reason is that DC made bad movies that drove off the general audience. Imagine you're a casual viewer who doesn't care that the fans are fighting. What you do care about is watching a good movie and feeling like you got your money's worth on that ticket to see a DC movie. Many people have felt like they wasted their money in recent years. The first Suicide Squad movie, Wonder Woman 1984, and the theatrical cut of Justice League were universally hated. Shazam 2, Aquaman 2, and The Flash were a disappointment. Batman v Superman pleased half the fandom, but it didn't resonate with general audiences. And Joker 2 is one of the worst movies in history. The only DC movies that audiences actually liked in the past 11 years were Man of Steel, Wonder Woman 1, Aquaman 1, Joker 1, and The Batman. This means that if you're a casual viewer, you probably only liked 5 of the last 18 DC movies. That's more than enough reason to avoid anything with DC's logo on it.
I don't ever want to see you again.
I know James Gunn's Suicide Squad got great reviews, but nobody watched it since it came out during the pandemic, so I'm not counting that one. On top of that, DC didn't know how to capitalize on the movies that did work. They didn't make a sequel to Man of Steel. The Wonder Woman sequel came out during the pandemic, so of course it did terribly in the box office because most theaters were closed. And Aquaman 2 came out 5 years after the first movie. If you liked Wonder Woman and Aquaman, you had no reason to see other DC movies, because Warner didn't know how to leverage those characters. Sure, they included Wonder Woman in Shazam 2 and The Flash, but Diana wasn't featured in the marketing, so most people didn't even know she'd appear. Add to that the fact that many people didn't want to spend another dime on DC after Whedon's Justice League, and you've got a recipe for disaster.
Big mess.
They also messed up with Joker 2. Joker should never have had a sequel. They could have explored other villains in the Batman universe who could carry a story without Batman, like Two-Face, but they chose to make an empty musical with a director who had nothing to say. It bombed at the box office because it was a movie no one asked for, and no one liked it. The only franchise they're handling well is the Batman. But so far, Matt Reeves' universe has only had one theatrical release. The second movie will likely be a success like the first one, but we'll have to wait until 2026 to find out. And finally, the fifth reason these movies fail. No one trusts DC. Not the fans, not the critics, not casual viewers. Not only because of the low quality of most of their movies, but also because of the broken promises. They announced projects starring the Wonder Twins and New Gods, but they were canceled before production even began. They finished Batgirl and then scrapped it. They switched directors when Justice League was already in post-production. They announced Henry Cavill was back as Superman and then fired him the following week. And we still don't know what's canon and what's not in James Gunn's new DCU.
I don't trust you.
No one's gonna risk going to the theater for a DC movie if the next week they can just say that nothing you saw is canon and that the sequels are canceled. After what they did to Cavill, they could do anything. James Gunn said Zolo Mariduena will continue as Blue Beetle in the new DCU, but I've seen many comments from people saying they don't believe him. They're worried the Cavill situation will happen again, and I get it. Trusting DC is like believing your ex's lies. You might go back with her for the good times you shared, but you know she could mess things up again at any moment. Eventually, you stop believing the lies because you remember all the times you got hurt. And just like you shouldn't get back with your ex, a lot of people have decided not to trust DC anymore. And they won't return to the theater unless Superman or Batman star in a really great movie. Luckily for the studio, The Penguin is doing well because it fixes many issues that the previous live-action projects had. It's doing much better than Joker 2, and we explain why in this video.
Well, we know him to watch it.